Okay, so here's a recap of the rest of Act 5, Scene 1 and Scene 2. If you're banging in the background, that's my kids playing dunking on the basketball net that's attached to their door. So Scenes 1 and 2, and then getting us into Scene 3, and then there's going to be a little bit of work for you to do. So a couple things. This whole speech, when he talks about, I mean, it's awfully convenient that he just suddenly says, "Ooh, I remember an apothecary," and he's like, "Oh yeah, here he is. This is the guy," and has said to himself when he walked through before, "And if a man did need a poison now, whose present sale is death in Mantua, here lives a caitiff wretch would sell it him." He's like, so when I walked by his shop before, my first thought was, oh, if somebody wanted to get poison, this would be the guy to get it from. And so then there's a conversation here in which he basically says, listen, I've got the stuff that you want, but I'm not allowed to sell it to you because it's the death penalty if I do. Mantua's law is death to any he that utters them, utters in this context, meaning gives them out. And this is a question I asked you about. He basically appeals then to his poverty. He says, art thou so bare and full of wretchedness and fears to die? In other words, you are sitting here so poor. He talks about famine being in his cheeks, need, oppression, starving in his eyes, contempt and beggary hanging upon thy back. So in other words, this guy does not have a lot of money. And he seems like he is really struggling. And so the world is not thy friend or the world's law because it's not making him, enough money to get by. The world affords no law to make thee rich, then be not poor, but, coordinating conjunctions, break it, the law, and take this, the money that I have to offer you. So he makes an appeal to his poverty. And this guy says, essentially, my poverty, but not my will consents. In other words, my will, I don't feel good about what it is I'm doing here. That's not why I'm agreeing to do this. I'm going to agree to do this because I'm poor. And Romeo's like, cool, I pay your poverty and not your will. And so then Shakespeare, in typical fashion, is like, hey, you drink this off, and if you had the strength of 20 men, it would dispatch you straight. So this is all going to happen very quickly. Obviously, if you had the strength of 20 guys to fight off this poison, you would still end up dead. And Romeo, of course, is not 20 guys. He's only one guy. So Romeo, if he drinks this potion, he's going to end up deadzo. And so he gives him the money and goes back to that poverty argument, like, here, take the money, buy food, gain some weight. And then it's interesting that he refers to the poison as a cordial. Cordials are typically like sort of after dinner drinks in a certain context, rather than a poison, as if it's a good thing. Because in his mind now, because he is the suicidal guy that we've been watching this entire time, and the only focus of his entire life is now dead, he looks at this as a good thing that he now has, the ability to free himself from all of this pain. Obviously a terrible argument. And obviously ending with, to Juliet's grave, for there I must use thee. And so then that brings us to the scene with Friar Lawrence and Friar John. So we talked about this before. We talked about his plan and all of the potential flaws in his plan. And one of the major potential flaws in his plan is that he's going to write this letter. Dear Romeo, hey, it's me, Friar Lawrence. I just want to give you a heads up. It's going to look like Juliet's dead. She's not really dead. We're just faking it so that you can sneak into Verona, which we said he shouldn't be in the first place, and wait for her to wake up, which is weird and creepy and not a good idea. And then you can whisk her off to Mantua. And we talked about what a dumb idea that was. She could just run off to Mantua anyway. Her father has already said, I don't want you here anymore. If you don't marry Paris, I'm going to disown you. So it seems like this is a good option. Well, here's the first major flaw in our boy's plan. So he comes in and he's like, oh, look, this is Friar John. What information do you have from Romeo? So in a weird twist of irony with our current situation, this guy talks about being quarantined. That was the answer to one of the questions. The searchers of the town, these are people basically enforcing the quarantine. So, San Francisco right now is under a shelter in place. They're not supposed to be going anywhere. There are some exceptions to that, obviously. But that's basically the idea, because they thought that Friar John and the other friar that he were with were both in a house where the infectious pestilence did reign. In other words, they thought that they had gotten the plague, that they were in a house, please, that they were in a house where the plague was, and so they would not let them move. Well, that's the guy who's got the letter that's supposed to go to Romeo. So, Rutro, I didn't make it to Mantua. My speed to Mantua there was stayed. Major question. But who sent the letter to Romeo? Answer, nobody. But Balthazar has gone to Romeo, and Balthazar has told him, dude, I saw her die with my own eyes. I watched her get buried. So there is the big bit of problem that we now have. Because when he says, oh, unhappy fortune, we talked about this in the little quiz thing as well, that is a reference to fate, unhappy fate. By my brotherhood, the letter was not nice, but full of charge of dear import, and the neglecting it may do much danger. Right. And so this is messing with the audience again. The neglecting of it may do much danger. Because we know that while he is saying this, meanwhile, back in the previous scene, Romeo has just purchased poison and is on his way to see his dead wife and then kill himself. And he does not know that she's not really dead. Any Monty Python fans out there? I'm not dead yet. So then Friar John says, brother, I'll go and bring it thee. Because he asks him for an iron crow. That's a crowbar. So this is Friar Lawrence getting ready to go deal with the grave himself. And so then he explains that he's going there alone. We compress the time again. Shakespeare, we've seen that already with the marriage. Shakespeare likes to compress time. Now we're really coming to the end of things, and it's all going to happen very, very quickly. And his plan is to get her and keep her there. And he's going to write again to Mantua. Well, look, there's no texts. So obviously the time it's going to take, here's Verona, here's Mantua. He's going to write another letter, and he's going to get it over to Mantua by like a guy on a horse. But meanwhile, from Mantua to Verona comes Romeo with his poison. And what we're going to have is this one's going to go this way, and this one's going to go this way, and they're not going to interact or see each other. That's a problem. So then we get to scene 3, and this one is just fantastic. So I want you to read it. I'm going to point out a couple things here at the beginning, and then I'm going to send you off on your own to deal with that. I lost my little highlight thing. Oh, well, we'll stick to the pen. Nope. Yep, we'll stick to the pen. So Paris, first of all, shows up, and he is there because he is mourning the loss of his wife. And he says, I want to be here by myself, and if you hear anybody coming, give me a signal that they're coming. And then he goes and he says, you can read all of this. He says these so sweet things about how sad he is about Juliet. But then the page, his little servant, whistles because he hears someone coming. Who's coming? Anybody? Anybody? That's correct. Romeo is coming, and he's going to bump into Paris. That's going to be interesting. So he says, what? A torch, muffle me night a while. And then it says he retires. He basically goes and hides in the bushes to see what's going on. And then Romeo shows up. So I want you to read the remainder of that scene, and I want you to pay extra special close attention to this section, because this is, without question, the greatest example of dramatic irony ever in anything. So bear with me here. Dramatic. All right, you get the idea. Drama, we'll just call it drama, irony. This tool works really well for annotating things. That's the only problem with this app. The app's amazing. Screencastify, but their ability to annotate is really pretty poor. So dramatic irony, and then down here, later on in the scene, I want you to pay very close attention. Once Juliet wakes up, to the question of fate and how fate keeps popping back up into this conversation that she has with Friar Lawrence. And then there's going to be a little assignment on Google Classroom that I want you to answer regarding that. And then you'll see that's going to take us to the end of the play. So that's where we're at. If you have any questions, just let me know and stay up on Classroom. We'll go from there. Keep everything up to date. All right. Talk to you later.